What's up, guys? I hope you're all doing well. Today, I have a really cool special guest. His name is very cryptic, actually. Darth Microtransactions. He and I met a couple of months ago. I have watched his content for years. I finally got a chance to talk with him on Tavern Talk, and it was a wonderful conversation. Ever since we talked, I have been wanting to have another conversation, and today we're doing that. Darth, welcome to my channel.
Hey, Brian. Well, thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was a good chat that we did with my co-host Gazi on the Tavern Talk, like you're saying. So I'm hoping to hear more about your game a little bit today. I don't know if that's on the list of topics, but
I would love to touch on it. We have a whole bunch of cool things to discuss. First of all,
Sure.
I've got to know, where did your nickname come from? I've never encountered a nickname like it before.
Sure. Well, my mom and dad both got to do a half of the name each, they said. So my dad was a huge fan of Darth Vader. My mom really liked buying things. So they just named me Darth Microtransaction. No, so the reality of it is there was a long time ago, I was having Christmas with my family, and an ad popped up for a game called Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. And it's just like a mobile game, and I was just downloaded it. I'm like, what's a funny name? And I'm like a huge Star Wars fanatic. There's Star Wars stuff all over this room.
Yeah.
And that was like, what's a funny name for like a Star Wars character that's playing a mobile game? So I was just like, I don't know, Darth Microtransaction. Like, you're a Darth that's buying shit because it's a mobile game.
Yeah.
And so that was really it. I mean, there isn't like a lot. It was just a dumb meme name, and I kept it through the years. So.
It has a certain weird tone to it, and I totally love the fact that, based on what I read about you, and keep in mind this is Gemini research, right? So take it with a grain of salt. But it said that you kind of began your brand as a bit of a anti-RMT, anti-predatory monetization crusader. And so I found the name Darth Microtransaction to be oddly ironic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's not like 100% accurate, because, like, to be clear, like, I definitely spend a lot of a lot of money on these mobile games. Like, for sure, I did. I always thought it was a bit of like, a little bit of a parody, because like I always had this. I had like my hoodies said like "well harder," I realized it's I'm a whale, and like I play these games, and these games are dog shit. I'm acutely aware of basically all of it. You know what I mean? But I legitimately like Gacha games. Like, I think they're fun. I was an adult. I wanted to buy some shit in the game. I did. It was fun. I liked the dopamine, and that was it was really not that deep. You know what I mean?
What was you mentioned a genre? You said you really like some specific kind of game.
Gacha games. Yeah, I liked Gacha games. I still do this. Some extent. I don't play them as much.
What is that word exactly? I've not heard it before. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, yeah. So Gacha, I think, originally comes from Gashapon, like the Japanese, like, pseudo gambling. If you know where that comes from, right?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so Gacha is effectively, I believe, derives from that, and it's basically just any game where there's a fairly prolific amount of like pulling shit from loot boxes, basically.
Totally.
Like trying to acquire characters. Genshin Impact, notable Gacha that's very well known. Things like that. Raid Shadow Legends, the Star Wars game I played. Like these types of games.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I actually was in Japan a couple of months ago and walked around to kind of see what the general recreation was. I was hoping to find a place to play Magic, actually. And we'll definitely talk about Magic in general later, because we kind of left that dangling in our last chat. But I walked around in all of these famous commercial neighborhoods, these residential neighborhoods, and obviously retail neighborhoods. And periodically you'd come across these stores, I guess, that were filled with loot boxes. And they had this whole progression of loot boxes kind of going through Japan. From the time that kids are very little, they kind of upgrade over time, and eventually they land on the Pachinko parlors, which were, again, all over the place. Have you been to Japan before?
No, but I would love to go.
I think you'd have a wild time there, actually. It's a very strange place. Not exactly what I expected. Just as an aside, there's this hilarious thing about Pachinko parlors. Do you know, have you ever been to one before? Do you know what they are?
No, they don't really have them where I'm at, so I'm familiar with them to some extent, but I have never been to one in person.
From the concept of game design, they're just pure RNG. There is no skill element at all that I could discern. And you're given this huge supply of little tiny metal ball bearings. And you press a button or flick a lever or something, and it fires them up into a lattice of stuff. It's almost like a pinball machine, but oriented vertically. And they bounce around on the little pegs, and then you eventually wind up in these little troughs at the bottom. And
yeah, it's Plinko from Price is Right.
I think that's probably based exactly on it. Yeah, perfect read on that. I couldn't make any sense whatsoever of how the scoring system worked. It's basically just like a physical slot machine, but they have anti-gambling legislation in Japan. So you're not allowed to actually win money from a pachinko machine. Instead, after you have your result and you get your points, you have to go and redeem your points for pieces of gold, literal gold ingots. And then you take the gold ingots from where you redeem them, where you redeem your points, across the street to a place that accepts gold ingots and gives you yen instead.
It's a loophole. I mean, if you think about it, actually, like this same concept sort of applies in a different manner, but like we have that too in the US. It's called like Chuck E. Cheese. You know, like you go get your tokens, and then you can buy a PS5 with your token. I mean, it costs you $2,000 to get one because you know the tokens are. It's a terrible exchange rate.
Beyond,
but it kind of exists.
The worst exchange rate probably known to man, right? Did you ever go and save up a whole bunch of tickets to get something when you were little?
No, oh man, dudes like me who our brains are wired to like things like Gacha. You think we're mathematically saving that? We're immediately doing the first the first thing on the bottom rung that's the closest to the dopamine. It's like, how many tokens do I have? Oh, I want that one. Then no, there's no saving that acquires here, bro.
Yeah, you wind up with a whole bunch of like orange and purple spider rings or something that all cost
exactly, or a bunch of Tootsie Rolls, some gum that's like 5 years old. Yeah,
some disgusting gum that you'd never eat. It's just the idea of doing redemption. Were you actually a crusader of sorts? Because it seems like, according to Gemini, that you sort of built an idea of evaluating games as they came along that had in-game microtransactions, that had purchases. And you would kind of rate them on a scale, or you'd kind of discuss them in terms of their ethics and morality.
I mean, I definitely have discussed them. Like, that's the thing that happens. I don't think I would like label myself as a crusader or some kind of like, holier than thou mentality. I mean, I was in there with the trenches with everybody else, but like, absolutely. Like if a game comes around and I play it and I spend money on the game, here's what I think about it. Here's what the value's like. I say value loosely here. Okay. And then kind of, talk about, I mean, that's absolutely part of making videos and talking about whatever you're doing. That continues to happen, but just not with that genre anymore.
What were just to dwell on it a little longer, what were the first games that you explored on your channel? And in fact, when did you launch your YouTube channel anyway?
Ooh, you got me there. Okay, so tell you what, I'll give you a little tidbit on the channel. Here's some rare lore. So originally the channel actually was not about gaming. It was called something different entirely. I don't think I've ever told anyone this. It's called Casey Talks Life, and it was launched like 10 years ago. And I would just do videos talking about whatever my day was, the jobs I was working, because I worked a variety of dog shit jobs, and like how I'm going about my day, and just a young kid in my early 20s. And I made one video where I was kind of talking about like, dealing with depression and stuff, as a guy in his 20s. And it wasn't really like a very sad video. It was more just like talking about like from a perspective of like dealing with it in gaming and, yada, yada. And this newspaper website, whatever you want to call it, they're called The Mirror. I guess they're from the UK. I think they're called The Mirror.
I've heard of it, yeah.
And they posted an article about this video that I did where I was talking about it. It was like I forget what it was called, like YouTuber, pledges to fight against depression in gaming or whatever. It's just something. And so I was like, that's not what, like, it was obviously a non-monetized thing. I'm getting like 500 views a video. It was just for fun and chatting and whatever. And I was just like, that's too many like eyeballs for me. So I like just deleted it entirely, like deleted everything. It was like, I don't want the smoke, basically.
Yeah.
So then later on, I just had that channel still. So I just renamed it to the meme name, and then started, talking about talking about the game I was playing, which was the Star Wars game at the time. And the only reason I was even doing that is because I was streaming to like 5 people or something playing the Star Wars game. And people kept asking me the same questions over and over again. So I was just like, I'm sick of answering the same question. So I'm just going to copy paste my thoughts in the video. And I just tell you, here's the video on it. And then people like the way I explain things. And I don't know, I just like kept explaining things, I guess.
I can see why. Honestly, I was really, really impressed by a lot of your style and your attentiveness generally to the conversation. When we talked back on Tavern Talk 7 months ago, you asked really, really insightful and interesting follow-up questions to me, and really made me think and challenged me in a bunch of places about not only the history, the formulation, the bedrock of Path of Exile, but also just deeper kind of game theory stuff, which I tremendously appreciate. It's not surprising to me that you resonated with the audience that you gradually built. How long did it take for things to kind of rev up, to spool up, before you were able to sort of feel like, wait, this is something I might actually be able to do almost professionally rather than something you were just doing as a hobby, I imagine? Sure,
yeah. I mean, I guess I'd push back on the term professional, but to some extent, I wasn't making a lot of money. I was always poor, until I got anywhere where people actually started watching me. And so I think in terms of like, I can do this professionally, I think what you really means I can do this and kind of like survive off it, basically, is the way I take that question. And so the answer to that is the first month.
Really?
Because, it was 30 days into doing it. And I had been already, YouTube was like, well, monetize your channel. Because I think the first month I ever did videos, I got like 400,000 views or something that month, which isn't a ton, but, it is enough to at least get monetization turned on. And so when that happened, I said, well, if I make $500 in this month, I mean, that's enough to like pay rent. So I'll just keep doing this. And so, the first month I think I made like $800. It was like $840 if I remember right. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just do this. And then it was like $840 and then like $1,200 and like $1,500. And then it like stayed around there for like a while, actually. And so I was like, okay, well, that was great. Everyone was super nice to me and the comments were great. And, I was like slowly upgrading pieces of equipment as I could. And, I was enjoying what I was doing. I was playing games and all that. And there's, other stories in there and how you actually like survive off YouTube when you're not making very much money and shit. Cause you don't realize stuff like taxes you got to pay at the end of the year. So you're like, oh, I made $1,500 this month. No, you made like $1,200. Like you just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And so like there's a lot of learning lessons there and all that. And I was enjoying what I was doing. And, it was better than the other jobs that I had. So I just kept doing it, So it was almost immediate.
Did you?
And it just kept going.
Did you ever produce any content about your own story in this regard, and maybe giving people who might be aspirant streamers or YouTube content creators, essentially professional gamers, some feedback and tips about how they might proceed to do that? Because I'm sure that there are tons of people who watch you who are very interested in the vocation themselves, but they don't have any idea where to begin.
So as far as I am aware, there may have been a few that slipped through the cracks. I believe I have answered and talked to, including video calls and everything, with anyone who is ever a small content creator that's ever asked for help. Like just peer up 100% of them. I believe, I could have missed this, but like I very rarely say no. But one is like, I don't think I'm large enough to the point where anyone really cares about my story. Like, I don't really think it's like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not going to go out there and be like, the story of Darth Microtransaction. I mean, maybe my editor would throw something together if I was answering questions on Twitch, but like, that's going to be like a 5 view video. No one really cares. It's like the value from any of the videos I ever made came from answering a question. I'm Wikipedia with a face, like they want a question answered, and the value doesn't come from, it's me with long hair. It comes from getting the answer to what it is they want. Right. And then at some point, like, hopefully they like me enough that it becomes more of a personality thing, but that's not really like originally where the value comes from.
Yeah.
And so in terms of like getting into the business and all that, like it is exceptionally difficult, and it is not something where you can watch a video and then just go do it. Like there's this one video that keeps popping up on YouTube called like Mr. Beast, like being, giving amazing YouTube advice for 10 minutes. And like, you can watch that, but you can apply 100% of it, and it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Like, that's not the way it works. So it's much more like, okay, you're a content creator, and I look and I see you're actually trying. Because what will happen sometimes is someone will make videos and stuff for 4 years, and do absolutely nothing different for 4 years. I mean, they'll upload the same video. I'm talking no title, no thumbnail, just like me playing whatever their favorite game is no one's heard of, episode 38. And they're like, why am I not like, I should be famous? It's like, it doesn't work that way, like at all, like remotely. So if I look and someone's been doing the same thing for 4 years and they're like, I don't understand. It's like, I'm not going to sit there and like spend 20 hours explaining this person because you've done zero effort. Like you haven't looked at anything. You haven't looked at anybody. You haven't tried to learn literally remotely. But if it's somebody I look and it's like, I've had dozens of these types of people that ask I'm trying, and you look and like they're actually trying, and you can kind of understand, okay, well, I can see where like there's some problems. Then it's like, yeah, I'll talk with you as much as you need to be talked with because I can see like your heart's in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's that's incredibly generous of you. How many people have come along like that?
I a lot.
Like, are we talking like 100? Are there that many?
I mean, probably. Like I've less now. I mean, I'm less now because I'm like very niche down into like I'm playing PoE all day and I'm doing ARPG and I'm watching videos and doing the whole streamer thing. But like, at the height of like D4 when everything was like launching, everyone's like, who's this guy? And Asmon's watching like every single one of my videos, bro. Like I couldn't answer all of them. Like it's just people just spamming you, But starting from back in the day when I was doing mobile games, I would say there's actually more people. Like the community was really tight knit back then, and like almost all mobile game creators almost know all mobile game creators. Like you're very very familiar with most of the people in the space. And I'm sure if any of them ever watch this, they'd probably know. Like I've talked to a lot of those guys. Everything from audio setups to like what I've learned and stuff. I'm not saying I got perfect. I'm not. There's people way bigger than me, even in that space and in this space and everything. But it's yeah, absolutely. Don't pull the lather up. Like you got to help. The only reason I even got anywhere was a guy named Trevor, aka Mobile Gamer. His name Mobile Gamer 365. His name's Trevor, lovely guy. And I didn't know anything at all about YouTube. I think I had 2,000 subs. I didn't even know how monetization worked. And he kind of like explained stuff for me and all that. So he's had an enormous impact on my life, even outside of YouTube stuff. So I try to learn from him, I guess.
Is he still active?
He's still active. He's covering Marvel Strike Force right now.
I see, but he focuses mostly on mobile games.
Yeah. It's in the name for him for sure.
You mentioned PoE just a second ago, and actually, I have a question related to that, which is, how did you find out about the game? Actually, how did it land on your radar? Because it's the furthest thing from a mobile game.
Yeah, I mean, I was covering Diablo 4, and there's like this. At the time, it's less now. It's kind of more amongst itself now. But like back in the day, there's this like I won't say civil war, but there's a war between PoE and Diablo. A little bit.
Oh, I'm aware of it.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware there, Brian. So, because of that, I was playing Diablo, and people were like, "Well, you play Diablo. You're the Diablo guy." My channel name was originally DM Diablo 4. That was literally the channel name until I renamed it. So they're like, why not like try Path of Exile? Everyone wants to see the Diablo guy play, its rival. And I did. And then Path of Exile basically ruined Diablo for me is kind of what happened.
How exactly? I'm really curious to hear that.
It's significantly better game. So it's, if you're going to play a game all day, you don't want to play the one that's not as good as the other one. You're going to want to play the one that's like more enjoyable.
It's so interesting, right? We're talking about things that are, I have this tendency also, and unfortunately, it comes across sometimes almost. It can show up almost as arrogance, even though it's basically the description of things that are fundamentally subjective, but talking about them in an objective way, and saying that something is just intrinsically better than another thing. And I feel like it's almost a privilege that you earn after putting in the time to really verse yourself in a system. Or in a genre, for example, you eventually get so good at, I don't know, maybe you're a horror movie aficionado or something. If you watch 1,000 horror films, you have such a good working vocabulary of when horror works and when it doesn't, that your subjective opinion about a new horror film is the closest thing that probably exists to objectivity about it. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about that. I'd really like to hear it's probably a bit of a challenge, but you've certainly thought of it, and maybe you've talked about it before. Give me a handful of things that you felt Path of Exile did substantially differently and better than Diablo 4 to make you declare it a better game.
Okay, well, to give you the disclaimer that I can only see things through my lens,
Of course.
and through the way that I rate things, is how going to dictate what I see as better or not. So when I say better, I do mean like from my point of view,
course,
right? Because if you preface the question, what do I think is the better game? I'm going to tell you I think it's Path of Exile. But if you preface it for someone new to the ARPG scene that wants to try their first ARPG, I'm not going to send them to Path of Exile. I'm going to send them to Diablo. Or for someone who's played ARPGs, it's PoE. Now, to answer your question, okay, part of what I said before was if I'm going to play a game all day, well, that's something Path of Exile does significantly better, in my opinion. The longevity of gameplay is significant in comparison to other ARPGs. There are other ones that notably have a long longevity of gameplay, sure. Okay. But for me, Path of Exile is going to have a significant longevity. The other thing that is exciting for me is because it is a seasonal game that's competing with other seasonal games, a large portion of your excitement in an ARPG that you're playing for any length of time is going to be coming back to each one of these seasonal launches. Now, PoE from multiple aspects wins this part of the equation as well for me, one of which is the marketing of it alone. Like the way that they actually present the league and get you excited for the league. Sometimes the sizzle makes the steak taste better a little bit. And I believe that they win in this category as well for me.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other part of it is, okay, so that's the sales pitch of it, but then also like the quantitative value of it in terms of how much they're actually offering you in each one of these opportunities to come back and replay the game is actually significant. I don't need to play any ARPG from one season or league to the next season or league. I just want to be excited to come back and play it when you're offering it again. I don't think there's any ARPG I've ever played from one league all the way through till the next one. PoE 2, PoE 1, Diablo 4, none of them do I play 4 or 5 months all the way until they offer another season. I just don't do that. I eventually get bored and I want to go do something else and I'll go play Factorio or whatever, right? And so no game offers that. But for me, in the equation of when I want to come back and play, PoE always gets me more excited. And in terms of what they're actually offering with that, they have that significantly larger as well. The other portion of it is like, okay, there's a longevity in terms of the content to absorb, but there's a longevity in terms of knowledge to acquire, which I think are actually different concepts entirely. Okay, some people see content as knowledge. That's part of it, sure, but there's plenty of things I don't know about Diablo 4 that I could go back and I could relearn and gain that knowledge if I want to. The difference is I don't want to because I don't necessarily find the knowledge I'm requiring to be a large enough vessel for me to then put onto my new characters that I'm building enough to the point that I want to go back and invest my time into that. So like that's another portion for me that I think Path of Exile is superior at. Okay. That's how I see it. Other people can disagree because there's the types of people that maybe don't have the time necessary to play it, or Diablo is not so complicated. It's better presentation in the beginning. Like there's other parts of the equation, but that's how I see PoE and why I enjoy it more.
My understanding of Diablo 4 is that it has a much more confined development system for characters. It's much less open-ended than PoE 1, and it's actually more similar to Path of Exile 2. And as someone who has sort of bridged the gap between both of those games, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how much your sort of Diablo 4 feeling, how much that experience appeared in Path of Exile 2 versus in the first game. The first game is so different. And when I say first game, I'm talking about PoE 1. PoE 1 and Diablo 4 are night and day difference. But Path of Exile 2, at least the last time that I played it, felt a little more similar to Diablo 4. I kind of got like Diablo 3, Diablo 4 vibes when I played PoE 2. And I'm very curious to know how, if you share that experience.
I think it's a valid point. There's a few reasons for this, okay? In Path of Exile 1, the skills and like classes are so decoupled from each other.
Yeah.
Just period, that when you think about a class, you don't think about any skill. Like if I tell you Trickster, maybe you'll think of like, Smite or something just because like people are playing it, or, the lightning one, I forget off the top of my head here, but like lightning strike. But that is not tied to that class.
Right.
Okay. Diablo 4 is like you play Necromancer, like the skills the Necromancer has. Okay. Now, being on rails like that is both good and bad. It's good because like you have class fantasy, which I actually think is a very important part of an ARPG. You're like, I want to be the summoner. And then you can like pick the summoner class. And it kind of helps you guide like where you want to go and gives you very accomplishable goals, and you unlock stuff as you go, yada yada. So it's a little bit more like, preordained a bit. You're playing a dev build, basically, is what it boils down to. And that can be actually quite good, because a lot of the times, people talk about, Path of Exile is like, you have the freedom of building your own builds, and I don't want to just play a build that, the devs told me to build, but then they go copy a build guide from a content creator anyway, and it's like, well, you're doing the same thing, So like I can understand the point. I think in why you probably feel the connection of that with Path of Exile 2 is two things. One of which is the onboarding process is significantly improved. So it doesn't feel like PoE 1, I think, is pretty janky for a new player to get into and like actually understand. I don't think it's friendly at all. I think they're trying to improve that, and they said so themselves, like the onboarding process they've been trying to improve. They added videos to kind of show what's going on, et cetera. It's been rough. It's notable, right? Yeah. They say if you make it to maps, we have your soul, but like you got to make it to maps as a new player, right?
Just to interject there, I just remember I don't remember the exact stats, but finding out how many people play Path of Exile and they don't get past the Twilight Strand. It's just like so soul crushing to see. But
for 100%,
for a million reasons, right? A lot of like the Giga Brains open up the passive tree and go, oh wow, think of the possibilities. And a lot of people open that up and they're like, I'm out. Whatever that is, I'm not going to deal with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've experienced that in other games myself, where I just think, I'm too tired. It's like, maybe this is a good game. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, I'm just too tired.
Oh my God. I know that feeling.
I'm going to go play Mario or something and like watch a movie, because like I can't be asked to deal with this. Like, I mean, that's 100% a valid criticism of the game. It's 100% a realistic part of what happens. And it's 100% a demographic associated like issue that, but back to Path of Exile 2 and why you're probably feeling how that's connected. Yeah. It's like, I think GGG themselves have like pitched it this way. I mean, when they like, now we're going to show you the warrior. And then they show you like the warrior uses maces. Well, no, they don't. Like, that's actually like not a thing. It's you can use a mace if you want, but they pitch it as a class. And so a lot of the times what happens, there's an ongoing joke, which I say not a monk. And I have this screen that like blots out the screen that says not a monk. Because if I use a quarter step, people are like, oh, what's this monk build? It's like, I'm not playing a monk. Like, it's not a monk. It's just, I have a quarter step. So like that concept has been hounded in a bit because it's easy to understand and it's marketable, and and you can release a weapon with the class at the same time, etc. So it's like, I think Path of Exile, 2 notably probably feels more that way because they've marketed them more that way. The demographic is more that way. The onboarding process is actually better, and then the pacing is slowed down in the beginning to kind of give you time to absorb what actually is happening.
Yeah. How are you dividing your time between the two games right now?
Oh, I just play what the league is coming up. Like, I haven't played PoE 2 in, over a month.
I see.
Because, PoE 1's got a leagues coming out. So I play both. I play PoE 2. I currently am enjoying PoE 2 more, but I play both leagues.
Do you think, is that because of the novelty of it?
I think it's multiple things. I think one is there's this sense of, in PoE 1, never being able to catch up. Like, I still have that, you know what I mean? I get to play it for a living, but like, I don't understand half the things that I hear people say.
That's crazy. So that's crazy to me, honestly.
Yeah, no, I've been, 2 years or something of full-time PoE, and it's like, I don't know. People are talking about like, oh, well, that he said this number, which means that connects to this unique item, which doubles down on this passive tree. It's like, I didn't even know those exist. Yeah. It happened just today.
It's kind of, the game is kind of old at this point. It's 13 years old, or I guess technically 12, since it released in October of 2013, and it's had more than 100 expansions. It's funny how, this may lead to sort of a general segue, but it's funny how much it has in common with Magic. It's something that I have found myself talking about increasingly when I've discussed how Magic is this interesting undercurrent that's flowed through everything that I've been involved with as a designer. And at a certain point, Path of Exile 1 is kind of like you're playing a Magic deck. You have almost as much agency over how you go about building a character in PoE 1 as you do building a deck in Commander. Your Commander is the class that you happen to play, and then you've got obviously the Ascensions. But it's so open-ended in terms of how you can play it. You can splash from other characters and stuff. It's so Magic-like in that way. And if you think about how people can play Magic for 20, 30 years as a lifestyle game, it really does explain why PoE is still so strong as a game 13 years after it came out, and how it has this sort of very interesting iterative cycle to it, that every 3 months there's a new expansion that comes out, and you open up booster packs, which are basically, the gaggle of skills and often minor changes, balance changes, and a little bit of new content that's added to the game. And you go back and you build your deck again, only this time you're going to play as a gladiator or whatever.
I'm curious about something about that.
Yeah.
Is you say with, there's like a new, basically the equivalent of a new league, a new pack, a new standard, whatever. So is it the same way for you where you'll walk away from Magic for a bit and then something new comes out and it brings you back? Or are you consistently like you're Magic, oh, there's a new one, still Magic? Or do you find yourself having the gaps?
That's really excellent question. For one, I don't play the standard format. And the standard format, I think, is the format that's most appealing, certainly to spike players, people who are interested in really actually grinding the game and competing at a higher level, not only playing on Magic Arena, or probably the few people who play standard on Magic Online, but the people who are playing with live cards also, I think, if they play competitively, they tend to play standard. And I haven't been one of those people for a very, very long time. I haven't really cared about standard much, or the Pro Tour. I haven't really followed it in 20 plus years, ever since it really wasn't kind of part of my day to day. And so I've played older legacy formats instead. I'm known for playing Old School, which of course makes sense. Are you familiar with that format at all?
I'm by no means a Magic the Gathering connoisseur. I've just started getting into it very mildly. So
the truth of the matter is that, to me, Magic Old School is the most pure version of the game. It's generally, there's a bunch of different communities that exist around the world. So the Old School format is often called 93, 94. But most of the time, Old School format begins with cards that appeared in the Alpha edition. So first edition cards, the multiple reprints of that first edition, Beta, Unlimited, and to a lesser extent revised. And then all the way up until either an expansion that came out, I think around August of 1994, called The Dark, or the set directly after that called Fallen Empires. And that's usually the cutoff for that format. So you're dealing with a really small, defined subset of cards. And It's not just a small population of cards, but it's interesting that they're both the simplest cards and also the most complicated. The best analogy that you could probably come up with is that they're the most analogous to just an ordinary chess piece. A rook is such a simple piece, right? It just goes backward and forward and left and right. But what the rook can do in a game mechanically of chess, and how the rook's role in the game changes, and how there's all these combinations and traps and stuff involving rooks, the complexity of how you use a rook at different stages of the game completely supersedes how simple the piece is. And Magic Old School is just like that too. The cards are so simple in terms of what they do that the games are extremely mathy and chessy. So that's the thing that really appeals to my mind as a player. And then on the other hand, we have almost kind of the opposite of Old School, which is the format that I've probably devoted the most time to in the last 15 years. And it's 1v1, so designed to duel, of the multiplayer commander format. So to answer your original question, when it comes to me assessing a new Magic set and caring about it and evaluating it, most of the time my paradigm is this card relevant in commander format? And more specifically, is it relevant in formats, or I should say S tier or A tier decks that I pay attention to and that I essentially compete with online? So I look through a entire list of 350 cards, and I don't generally care about the theme. I don't care about the flavor at all. Whether or not it's Ninja Turtles or Spider-Man or back to Fairyland and Lorwyn or something, whether it's a Magic IP or it's some sort of borrowed one, I don't care about any of that. I hone in on simply the mechanics. And more importantly, this is a good card objectively, but is this card good enough, and does it fill a specific role in a commander deck that I've been working on, developing for potentially a decade or longer, that it would supersede and kick one of those cards out? Because a card has to not only be amazingly good, but it has to be better at doing what another established card already does. So my entire perception of Magic formats is warped around that completely. And I imagine that something analogous in Path of Exile would be somebody like Ghazi, who always loves to play Summoner. So whenever a new expansion comes out, Ghazi wants to immediately know what's new with the summoner, what's new with the necro. Are there new cool necro skills or tools that I've never used? That's kind of how I relate to Magic expansions. And I'm curious, do you have any pet builds that you like to always kind of come back to that are kind of your bread and butter as a player?
I mean, I think I definitely play more melee builds than anything, but I actually try to play a bit of a variety. Like, I don't try to stick to any one thing in particular, because the fun for me isn't necessarily like consistently min-maxing the same build and getting that extra 1% on it from, league to league.
Yeah.
It's kind of absorbing the game and like, okay, well, let's try out this one. What's new about here? Let's try this new farming strat. Like, trying stuff I haven't played. My favorite thing to do, like just period streaming, is playing games that are like notable games that I've never seen, like I'm fully blind to.
Interesting.
So, like as an example of this, like I played Dark Souls, the Dark Souls series, and I'd never seen or played those outside of Elden Ring. So, like examples like that. So like, it's kind of the same thing in PoE in a little bit to me, which is like, I like trying. So every now and then I'll pull up someone's build and be like, what is this guy doing? Like for a bit, let me try this build. This looks interesting. I'll do a little research. But a lot of times I just kind of like, like this league, I don't know what build I'm playing. I'm going to probably throw Shield Crush, try to redo the very first build I ever did in Path of Exile. And I'll just figure it out on league launch day. I'll just figure it out as I go.
It's so crazy to hear that, just because it does sort of date your entry into the franchise. The fact that for all of the time and energy you spent on the Path of Exile IP, that you've only really been playing it for a little over 2 years, is what you said?
Something like that. It was Total League. Whenever Total League was my first league.
What was your first impression? We didn't get a chance to talk about this in our Tavern Talk episode because I kind of monopolized things. But what was your first impression of PoE 2 when you played it? I'm very curious to know that, because I had
PoE 2 or PoE 1?
PoE 2, because at that point you had played Path of Exile 1 a fair amount, right? You'd played it we went into early access like a year and 4 months ago or something. So you had 8 months of PoE 2, 10 months, a year, or PoE 1 before you played the sequel?
I was mixed, because mostly people were fairly positive, but there was some pretty rough issues, like the very first iteration. I'm talking when we flew out and played like, I think pre-alpha type stuff, like the first playtest stuff. Because there was a couple issues I fundamentally had with it, and they've moved on these since. But like, just to give you an example.
I'd love to hear these. Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah. So one of them would have been like your flasks, like recharging your life flasks. Like they only dropped from killing yellow mobs. So you were just no flash. So you were constantly teleporting back to base, and it felt much more Souls-like. I mean, way more so, because you'll kill like 2 packs of mobs. And you're like, I gotta go back to base. And you go back to base, and you're trying to progress through like a singular portion of the map in the campaign. And in a way, that was kind of interesting. Like I like the pace. Weirdly enough, I like the pacing more of that. But like in terms of like the flasks were horrible. Okay, like it was just not good. It was very, very, very consistently like annoying. Like the closest thing I could say to that is like if you ever played like a survival game in which they have some item that just bottlenecks you too much, like you need like these screws or something, so you have to go find like 500 of them, and everything is determined on the screen. It felt that way. It was just like, man, I don't want to go get these stupid flasks. It felt like a time tax for no reason.
Interesting.
Other than just be annoying. So they fixed that, but like that was an issue. The other part is like, I mean, pretty much everyone I could see there was massively impressed, myself including, with the graphics and the bosses. Like that was the first bit of it, which actually kind of comes full circle, because now bosses have been basically trivialized to the point of like they don't exist. They get deleted like a normal mob, which is very sad.
Really?
Because the entire like premise of there's a lot of bosses and they're very scary. I mean, so much scary. Like the first boss now, the worm that people you can kill, like literally you can walk naked into it and just punch the worm to death.
What
like
are they doing?
That boss
what the hell?
Was back in the day. Well, I mean, it's so much more like we have knowledge and like gear and power creep and shit like that. But back in the day, like the playtest, literally like reporters who flew out to test it rage quit, and they sat on their phone for 4 hours because they couldn't get past the worm, like the first boss. So, it's like seeing that go to where we're at now, which is like, I mean, people are doing 50 million damage or something. Like it's just it's been crapped a bit.
Yeah, I you and I talked about this before, right? And I defended the initial difficulty of Path of Exile 2 as basically saying that as a developer, you can't really lead with the game being super easy and then make it harder. It's just, that is very unlikely to work well, because you kind of alienate everybody when you do that. If you do it the other way around, if you start extra hard and then you gradually make it easier, it kind of feels earned. You know, it's the same progression that exists, for example, in an MMO with the way that the mythic bosses and stuff. I'm talking specifically about World of Warcraft, and how in that game, they release the bosses insanely overtuned out of the gate, that none of the guilds can really beat them except maybe 5 or 6 in the world. And you're not intended to beat them. You're intended to play the lower, easier content while the pros play the hard content. And then eventually they turn the dials down and suddenly the regular players get to flow into the endgame content. And that progression has been extremely successful. It would never work in the other direction. So I think that they had to err on the side of making the game just totally ridiculously hard. I remember finding the boss fights to be hard to the point of being grindy and almost repetitive. And because you spend so much of your time just rolling out of danger rather than actually doing anything, I didn't feel like my gear mattered particularly much either. That was actually a thing that I said to other people in conversations about the game, an area of reservation that I held for it personally. You could avoid a mechanic completely to mitigate it. You didn't have to actually put your gear on to make it better. And so therefore, all that gear did was allow you to be sloppy, and it allowed you to kill the bosses faster. And that might be something that would be very hard. Like the design of the bosses and the roll mechanic were so interwoven to how the game felt to play that they were kind of stuck with it. Has there been anything done structurally or mechanically since the first few versions of the game to address that? Or is that just the way it's played?
I feel like it because the dodge roll exists, it means that bosses are created in mind that it does exist, for instance. So it's like a lot of times you'll have like, I don't know, just an example, like the Arbiter one-shot mechanic or something, which is like you can use dodge rolls to like position yourself. But that's probably a bad example because you can literally just walk there with WASD and movements, speed boots. But like, I feel like the bosses in particular are kind of designed around dodge roll existing. I know what the sentiment you're talking about. Yeah. It does make it a little bit weird because like you can't rely on dodge roll in mapping. Like you can't just like use dodge roll constantly just to, like you'll eventually die. I mean, I play mostly hardcore. So like I'm thinking like a hardcore spec. Like you're not gonna make a build around like, okay, well I don't need defenses because I'll just spam dodge roll. Like, you know, that's not really like a thing. But in bosses, they definitely have a little bit of like they have to design with the premise that dodge roll exists because they have like, you're familiar with like the red flash, you know how red flash boss attacks work?
I don't know that actually.
Yeah, so like you can't block, you know, like, you know, block is an example where I'm going to go with this. Like block can block like everything, but you can't block like red flashes.
I see.
For instance. I see. So because of like the block mechanic, they have to design it in the space where that, you know, that happens as well. And I think it's kind of like the same thing with dodge roll. Like they have to design around the fact that dodge roll is in there. But like, I do wonder like the same question, like how much does dodge roll being in the game, you know, make the design space a little bit different?
It is like the best example I can think of, honestly, and you'll relate to this as well, anyone who's played Elden Ring. I've not played Elden Ring myself, but I've watched my son, he's 16 now, play 300 hours of the game. I mean, he went totally insane and played 12 different classes to extremely high level and so on. So I got to watch lots of Elden Ring over the span of about a year. And my impression of the Elden Ring bosses and just the equipment in the game is that, yeah, the equipment looks cooler. It gives you a little bit of extra damage and so on. But really, at the end of the day, you can beat all the bosses naked if you just know how to roll and do the timing correctly. And then it's just a matter of how patient are you versus how savvy are you with knitting your equipment together so that your gear fundamentally matters. By making Path of Exile 2 Souls-like in that way, the fact that that you can mitigate so much of the threat by just evading, it just makes you feel a little less attached to the gear. And we name the company Grinding Gear Games for a reason. We want you gear to be foremost because, and this is something you and I, I'm sure we'll talk about more when we have discussions about game design. But as a game designer, one of your primary jobs, one of the things that you really, really have to do is you have to trick the person's brain into believing that what they're doing is real to some extent. If you can't trick their brain, there's this missing immersion There's this wall of emotional investment between what their hands are doing and what they're feeling physiologically. And if you never breach that wall, it's really, really hard to get people to care about what they're doing. It's really hard for them to get invested in it, to want to do things long term. And certainly if you have microtransactions, to get people to pay you money for that experience also. All those things have to be intertwined. How do you feel about the gear in PoE 2 versus PoE 1? Does it feel different to you? I'm really curious to know that.
The gear is like almost more important in PoE 2. So like most of your power in your character comes from your gear in PoE 2. Like definitely, it's less in the passive tree. It's a lot more in the gear. And in terms of like defensive prowess, I would say defenses are not really in a state that most people would consider healthy or balanced at the moment, because most of your defensive layer just comes from like basically your EHP, like how much HP can you possibly get? And it's not so much coming from mitigation. Like armor can work in the smaller damage amounts. Like armor's not as bad as people say it is, but like most of your I'm going to survive is coming from like eating the one big tank slams that come, and that mostly just comes from energy shield. So like energy shield has been like basically way too strong for way too long. It's just everyone just stacks, you can get up to 20,000 plus energy shield and you can tank basically everything in the game. I don't think that I see where you're going with this, but I don't really think that it's in a position currently where like all of the bosses are invalidated because dodge roll exists. Yeah. Like it's kind of like dodge roll is much more like, I feel like it's about positioning, and like sprinting. There might be a bit of an argument that it's invalidated like some of the moves because the bosses were invented before sprinting exists, which was there to solve the problem of people feeling like the movement speed was
I remember
bad,
that.
they still went, so like there's another conversation to be had there, but I don't feel like dodge roll is invalidating a character's defensive level, because the reality is if you keep dodge rolling, you're dodge rolling one direction or another, and you're going to continually pull packs of mobs. And the real like scary part of your character, it's not really bosses, because the bosses are a little bit more Souls-like in the version of like, if you know what they do, like they're less threatening. It's not like they're mostly just gear checks. Do you have the defensive? Like if you kind of know what the boss does, you can avoid a lot of the damage by just like not sucking, basically. So a lot of those, they are built to be like, stand here and you won't take as much damage, and they're more interactive. So I actually don't hate that about the game, because the concept of like, I'm fighting a boss and I'm actually like positioning my character and not just standing in space and like spamming and hoping, I have enough defenses to invalidate all of the boss's actual abilities, and I'm just sitting there and eventually kill him.
Yeah.
You should be able to do that in an ARPG to some extent, but I don't hate the design space of, I'm going to make a game in which you actually have to move your character. You actually have to like fight them like they're a boss and not just, a stat check. Like I don't hate that. But I will say that the real scary part for like defenses is like more mapping. And when you start getting like terrifying map mods, et cetera, or notably the tempo from this league, when you really start juicing up the tempo, et cetera, then, it's the rare mobs can hit you pretty hard. And there are some outliers of certain mobs in particular that just hit like really, really hard with some mechanics. Like there's these guys that have this giant wheel, and they hit the first time, they break the wheel when they slam you over the head. And then after that, they don't hit as hard. So it's like, if in that circumstance, sure, you could dodge roll out of that, but also it's like a knowledge check of don't eat that one. And then if you dodge roll into another one, and you get hit, well, you're kind of screwed. Or if you're sprinting and you get knocked down in sprint, you're for sure dead. So like, I feel like there's a little bit of like, you could dodge roll spam, but you also would just kind of be bad to do it, because the real like invalidation of, do I need to worry about getting hit by something, is DPS in the game. Like everyone just kills everything instantly anyway. Yeah. So it's like, no one's dodging shit with dodge roll because they have a spark build that's doing 50 million damage a second and one shots multiple screens anyway. So it's like, you're never going to see like a juiced player like, oh, he would have died there, but he dodge rolled. Like that's just not a thing that happens, because people are just killing everything. The real balance problem is the damage.
So if you had to summarize in terms of things that you would want to improve about PoE 2, if you had a magic wand right now and you had some agency in this, what would you improve about the game, other than perhaps what we discussed already, that the bosses appear to be extremely undertuned now, and that whole threat component and buildup and stuff is now missing?
Well, I think I've said this many times before, and I think my opinion kind of remains the same, that PoE needs two things. It needs Act 3 probably to be a little bit less of a slog. I still, like, they've been doing some adjustments there. I still think they could cut 1, maybe 2 zones from Act 3, because I think a lot of people get sick of Act 3. I know there's people who like Angormus, shout to Angormus, out there speed running all the way through Act 4 in 2 hours flat. Like,
God.
Sure, but
That's
a lot of
crazy.
people get bored on their second character going through the act 3. They're just like, I'm not going to do it and log out. So there's probably a little bit of a slog that's happening there. Okay. Outside of that, I really don't think there's like a lot of huge fundamental issues, because we already talked about balance. Like balance is actually like there's a problem here. Like crit's like too strong, energy shields like a little bit dominating, and etc. But I think mostly what it needs is time, man. Like it needs multiple leagues, because the difference between where it is now and where it was like in 0.2 is massive, and that's only because we've had 2 actual leagues. Like 0.2 doesn't count. They just added wisps and like add some bad updates, and they fixed that. So 0.3 was Abyss, very well received league, lots more crafting options, first actual league mechanic, 10 out of 10, everyone loved it.
Wonderful,
okay?
yeah.
Then 0.4 happened. The Val Temple, I think, is a little bit of a balance nightmare trying to get it right. But other than like the currency it's printing and the economy being ruined, like outside of that, pretty cool mechanic, cool new boss fight. But again, it's invalidated because everyone just one shots it. When the balance gets right, then that'll be better. Cool new boss fight, cool new mechanics. Great. I like the addition of the Valborns, new unique items, new currency. Like that's all good. I actually think the leagues, like from 0.3 and 0.4, they're adding significant chunks, but it's just they have to have, they need a year and a half, 2 years to like finish building the game. Everyone's talking about there's nothing to do like on board. It's like because we've had 2 leagues. Like imagine if PoE 1 pick any 2 leagues in PoE 1. Say, I pick Blight and Heist, and that's all that exists. You were going to get bored there too.
Totally. And not as many acts either, obviously.
Yeah, it's the game's not done. I mean, this isn't me waving the early access flag and defending, because there's a ton of problems, but it's like, I don't have this. There's a lot of doomerism that goes on with PoE 2 right now, where it's doomed and it's got all these problems and all that. And then as soon as a good league comes out where people are printing divines, they're like, oh, this is one of my favorite leagues of all time. Like this is so great. It's like the only thing that happened is now they're dropping divines. So it's like, I actually don't think there's this huge fundamental like doomer problem with PoE 2. There is stuff that can be fixed. And I think a lot of it has to do with balance, but I think they need to add everything in, and then they have to balance. They have to add in all the weapons. They have to add in all the league mechanics. It's just, they need time, man. It's going to take them a while.
How long do you think it will take? I mean, if you had to just put a guess on it before the game will feel feature complete and it will have all of its at least initial content in there.
They need mid-game. So I'll go through the list of stuff they have to have, in my opinion, before like it starts to feel complete. You have to have a campaign completed. You have to have the mid-game golf that they've mentioned before has to be added into the game. So right now there is no like Exarch, there is no, Shaper, there is no like mid-game bosses. You get to there, you have the league mechanic bosses, you have Arbiter, you have Uber Arbiter, which no one really cares about Uber Arbiter. You have, and then like that's it. And you go from the first tier map to tier 15 maps, like, very quickly. There isn't much progression from hitting the maps to hitting the in game, in my opinion.
Interesting.
Currently. So I think the mid game needs to be stretched out a little bit.
Okay.
Once you have those 2 things, then you have to finish fleshing out crafting, and you have to have the other classes and other weapons in the game, basically, in order to give enough build variety. Druid was added. It added a lot new builds. The Ascendancy seems to be very well received by people. It was mostly a very positive release. Some people are calling it like the best release. I think it was a Zizran tweet I saw or something that said he thought this was the best class that PoE ever released, basically. Wow. So you have people like, like they like the updates. It's just they have to have more of them. And I think minimum you have to have campaign, you have to have mid-game, you have to have some in-game beyond Arbiter, and you probably need 2, maybe 3 more league mechanics. So because of that, I would say they probably need a year. It probably is going to take a year.
It's so much a consequence of one of these biggest conundrums that you have to do or engage in as a game developer, which is figuring out exactly, but how good can you make the content to the point where, just going back to PoE 1, when we made Path of Exile 1, a whole bunch of the engine and the graphical capabilities and the netcode and everything were all made between like 2006 up to about 2010, 2011, I think. I could be a little bit inaccurate there, but it's a basic assumption. And after that, you're just sort of layering on content. You're not tethered to some like extremely complicated aesthetic. And in PoE 2, the graphics of the game, it's just overall capabilities and how many different moving parts it has are so exponentially larger that adding new content to that system takes eons. The PoE 1 production is so lean at this point. It doesn't require the manpower of a team of 100 people to crank out new content. Everything is so streamlined and established that you can just release stuff at a steady clip, and you have enough time to adequately balance it and do all that other cool stuff too. And the stuff in PoE 2 is so high production that it's very, very hard to create episodic AAA games if you think about it. PoE 1 kind of looks like between AA and AAA in some places, but it's still fundamentally an indie game designed by an indie team. And so it's very easy to update and iterate that. Whereas a PoE 2 is like a AAA product. And if you look at, are there other AAA games that are trying to release content at the same pace, 3-4 months or whatever, like a regular league cycle? Is there any other precedent at all?
I mean, pacing, yes. In terms of quality and quantity of releasing, I don't believe so.
Yeah.
That's why I've become such a fan, is because I think they're not just making the best ARPG, they're making the two best ARPGs
at once
at the same time, and literally both of them are beating every other ARPG, either one of them, in my own opinion.
Yeah. It's a really interesting conundrum, again, that if you ever try to make your own game development project, and actually this might make a cool segue to talk about what your interest there. I'm actually very curious to hear what you are brewing in your own mind, in addition to talking about my own current project. But it's one of the things that you will definitely face if you decide to go forward with the idea of making your own game. You are in this constant battle between ambition and execution, and having to make these essentially day-by-day ROI calculus on everything, because it's so easy to fill your game up with all sorts of cool ideas. And then you reach a point where you can't tune or balance it. You can't add to it. You can never really make it even close to as good as it could have been if you had removed half the features and just focused on the good half. So one of the things that you said to me after we met the first time, after we had our conversation on Tavern Talk, we corresponded a little bit in email, and you mentioned that you had some game design aspirations yourself. And before I ask you even what you're thinking about that, I wanted to talk really quickly about sort of my philosophical take on this as it pertains to other people who might also want to make a game. I'm really of the opinion that games as a creative endeavor are very much like inventions, that they really only make sense and generally only tend to succeed when they are solving and addressing a common problem that people have. When people find themselves declaring, wouldn't it be cool if someone made a blah? And whether that's an invention or whether or not it's a game, if you can figure out what people are saying, what they're referring to specifically when they make that statement, then you're onto something. So for your idea, what is the thing that people are asking themselves that makes your idea important and something to maybe pursue?
I don't think any of the ideas I have are important, Brian.
Give yourself some credit. I'm serious. Give yourself some credit.
Well, I mean, I don't know about a question in particular, but I can tell you I wish there was a game that combined my current two favorite games, which is Factorio and PoE. Like I played way too many hours of Factorio lately. I went down the rabbit hole and got addicted to that. So like I think it'd be really fun to have an automation game with like the depth of Factorio, but like the output that you're doing and the thing that you're resolving isn't building a rocket to go into space. It's to like the parts come together to make your build. You know, like as you get the pieces and automate the pieces, that increases things like attack speed, etc. So you have to like find resources, mine resources, build a build, and figure out your blueprint for, you know, basically your giant motherboard you're building, and the efficiency of which you build it turns into the efficiency of how well your character plays.
What if you're not the person who winds up using the output? If you're the entities that create it and it's used by heroes, so you hand it off or something. So you
could do that. I feel like that runs the risk of turning into idle game space at that point, which is like, I mean, that's fine. I actually like idle games. Like I play those too. So I don't hate the idea, but like there's something I think appealing to me about like I went to build a factory, and the output of me like building my Factorio factory, of having like 100 hours in building my factory, is like my character is really fucking juiced.
No, I totally,
you know what I mean?
I love that idea, right? It's like in a game like Factorio, I played similar things. I actually haven't played that game. I know Jonathan Rogers, GGG, is a huge fan of it, and I remember watching him play it a number of times on visits to New Zealand. I've never played it, but another friend of mine got super, super addicted to it also. And at the end of the day, you don't get to do anything with all the cool shit that you're making in the factory, right? It's just like helps run your city or gets you score or something, but it's not like it's serving some larger endeavor that you ever have access to. And having some kind of metric of that, some way to utilize that, does sound like a really neat idea.
Yeah, I mean, Factorio is like, I actually made my list of top 10 games of all time, maybe top 5. Like, it's definitely kicking some high tier games out of my top 10 and top 5 to like make it in there. Cause like, I absolutely love that game. So if you have not played that game, 100% recommend it. It's like, the way I would explain it is Satisfactory, which is like another factory, and not to get off topic of like making games, but just my sales pitch real quick. Satisfactory is like PoE 2, like easy to get into, visually pleasing. Like you can play this, it's great. But then Factorio is like PoE 1. It's like, okay, this is, fuck the graphics. It's all about how complicated and complex can you get it, and math and building and all these things. So it's I don't know, it's just a 10 out of 10 game for me. Like you could lose thousands and thousands of hours to that game.
I've seen the evidence of it in some of my friends, actually.
Yeah.
I am very curious. You mentioned your top 10. I think you and I should do like maybe a top 5, or at least try to do our best estimate.
I'm down.
You start with number 5 on that.
All right, but if we're gonna do this, then we go back and forth. I do my 5, you do your 5, and I do my 4, you do your 4.
I agree. So, but the question is, do we start at? I think it's easier to start at number 1 and work down than go the other direction. So let's start at number 1.
Oh, you want to do your best game? Okay.
I think it makes sense.
I don't know. I think that's harder, but okay, all right, I got you.
Okay, we can do it the other way. All right, we'll go to 5th. I should be able to think of it. I think I'm just being lazy. So,
I mean, starting with the number 1 is like brutal. Like I'll explain my number 5 for a bit for you, and I'll give you a little bit of time. Okay, number 5. Let's see here. All right, top 5. This is where it gets really hard. I think I'm going to say number 5 for me is Command and Conquer Original.
Interesting.
Like the original Command and Conquer, not Red Alert. Red Alert's great, but like the Command and Conquer OG, basically a follow up to like their Dune game. I'd say OG Command and Conquer, because I think a lot of games like have derived from that. It was a fantastic PvP experience. Back in the day where like if you had to want to fight like another person because you had to go through dial up and all this garbage. Nod, great villain, but also like the one with the villain where you kind of want to play as the villain. Great sound design, some of the best OST of all time, great sprites and animation. Command and Conquer, I think I got to put Command and Conquer in my top 5 probably. Wow. I mean, I think it edges out Age of Empires 2 in my opinion, even though Age of Empires 2 is probably the better game. But like for me personally, I'd have to put it top 5.
2 RTSs though, interesting, because you mentioned Age of Empires, and those would be 2 RTSs in the top 5. Because it's
I'm saying it kicks him out. Like I would give it to Age of Empires 2, but like I'm biased because I like Command and Conquer.
Gotcha.
So it's like normally I would have to put Age of Empires 2 in the top 5, like you would have to, but like I'm gonna have to kick it out in favor of Command and Conquer.
May I ask how old you are? Because this actually kind of informs a person's experience a lot too. What the formative years are.
I'm 35.
You're 35. Okay, so I have 16 years on you, roughly. Yep. I'm thinking about when I started in gaming. I started playing games. The first games I played actually were on I mentioned this, I think, in the interview, on a K-Pro 10. A K-Pro 2, which was this giant box that actually had a keyboard attached to it. And it had the ability to interact with floppy disks, but it didn't have a hard disk, so you couldn't save your characters. And the games on it were ASCII games. Most of them were text-based and adventure games, actually.
Yeah.
So those were my formative years, but I don't think I would have ever said that any of those early games were even close to a favorite. It's kind of like I played them because I had to. I had to feed the urge to game. But, you go to war with the soldiers that you have. And at the time, you're sort of forced to play these remedial games. They're almost entirely in your own mind. I think that they're very interesting from a gameplay perspective and also from a developer's perspective, because you have to create the entire experience in the person's mind when it's entirely text-based, and they did a very good job of that. But it wasn't until probably 7, 8, 9 years later that candidates started to appear. I played mostly PC games when I was growing up because my family had I think we had like an early 286, some precursor to that. I usually actually went to friends' houses and played games at their houses. I'm trying to think of what I'm going to say as my fifth best game.
I was going to say, I feel like you're stalling.
I'm stalling.
This feels like
my mind is racing right now. Okay, I've landed on one of two titles, either Ultima 5 or Star Control 2. It's going to be one of those two.
Ooh.
Ultima, have you played any of the Ultima series, or is that just too ancient?
Nope. These are too deep of a cuts for me, I think.
Yeah. God, the Ultima series. The first one I played was Ultima 3. I played it a little bit at a friend's house, and I did not like it. It just looked like Atari graphics, and I figured that, if the game's going to be on a PC, it should be better. Ultima 4 was much better. A fully immersive game that I spent an entire summer playing at a friend's house, although we never got past the final part of the final dungeon because the guy who made it is this famous game designer named Richard Garriott. And my impression of Richard Garriott is that he's a bit sanctimonious as a game designer. I don't know what he's like as a person, but he's sort of a sanctimonious game designer. And he kept wanting to put ethics and morality into his games to make players make these moral choices while they're just playing an RPG. And at the end of Ultima 4, you have to answer these questions that relate to moral choices. And I'm like 11 or something, and I have no idea what it's asking me. It's
asking you the trolley question like it is 11-year-old.
If you answer one question wrong, you and your friend get booted out of the final dungeon called the Abyss all the way back to the start after like 6 hours of work. And your friend Chris goes berserk and screams audibly and runs out of the room. And then a week later, you find the time to do it again. You get back to that room. And basically it repeats again. You don't know the answer and you never play the game again. That was my experience with Ultima 4. But Ultima 5 was so unbelievably good. I feel like I'm tilting towards Ultima 5 right now is the answer. It was
this is a great sales pitch so far. Morality for an 11-year-old.
It was such a sick game. It was so good. I never got to play it nearly as much as I wanted to because I had limited access to the family PC. My dad walled it off behind a password. Because if I had free reign to it, I would have probably dropped out of elementary school or whatever and just somehow found my way home and broke into the house to play computer games. Although maybe that would have been more middle school. Either way, Ultima 5 just put it all together. It had unbelievably cool combat, the treasure. It had loot boxes in it. Whenever you kill the monsters, they would drop a little treasure chest. You open up the chest, and every now and then there'd be some cool items in there. It had exploits in it. It had dialogue and NPCs. You traveled the world, and it had the full RPG experience. You controlled a bunch of different guys in turn-based combat. It was so brilliant. Just
sounds pretty good.
A generational game to me. And to me, the best Ultima, I think, continued on through 6, 7, and 8. But at a certain point, they started to focus too much on graphics and trying to push the envelope of what they could do graphically. And they kind of left a lot of that deep storytelling behind, which made the sequels less important to me. So I'm going to go with Ultima 5, number 5. Back to you.
Okay, number 4. All right, don't worry. I got mine prepared for you. Okay, I'm going to have to go. I'm right to it. So I'm going to put that ball right back in your court here in 2 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to have to go Super Smash Brothers Melee. Okay, not Brawl, because I think they lost a lot of the magic in Brawl.
Yeah.
And not the original, because I think Melee, in my opinion, was actually better. I think the movement in the game was phenomenal, the character choice, etc. But Super Smash Bros. Melee, for me, is the greatest fighting game of all time.
Wow!
And I'm not a massive fighting game fan. I mean, I like fighting games on occasion. Don't get me wrong, okay? But there was something so unique about the way that they actually did, how that fighting game worked. They managed to do a party game, but also, I think accidentally so, made a hyper competitive game with good matchups and counter picking and all of that. The Smash Bros. Melee was just, I don't know what to say. It's a phenomenal game, through and through. At any skill level too. Very hard to find fighting games where you can enjoy no matter the skill level. You know what I mean? People that aren't good at fighting games just picked up a controller, play for the first time with a buddy at a friend's house, equally as enjoyable as the guy who spends 20 years grinding so that he can play Pikachu. It's really good game.
Legendary, actually. I've heard a lot of friends tell me about it and play it. I don't have a particularly positive impression of the Smash Brothers genre. I feel like I've been forced to play it a few times at friend gatherings and stuff where people play it, or there's someone just has a console system and it's got that game on it or some version of it. it always sort of felt like a really, really chaotic version of trying to make Street Fighter or something, like trying to make a fighting game. But it has all of these weird chaotic elements, characters getting knocked off the screen and stuff.
Yep, it's really good. That's we could go down a whole. I know we're trying to get through this list. So
well, I mean, we'll belay
the point.
We can always have another conversation, on more serious subjects. I'm enjoying this one quite a bit, and meanwhile, while you're talking, I'll admit to be thinking about the rest of my list.
Well, yeah, it's time, sir. Number 4. It's right back to you. You got to hit me with number 4.
Okay,
right
I'm gonna regret this later, and probably I have to pick a specific version of it. Can I say the whole Street Fighter series up to Super Street Fighter, or do I have to pick a specific one?
I mean, that's cheating, but I'll allow it.
Okay.
Street Fighter as a whole. You want the whole genre of Street Fighter. Okay.
My opinion of this does not match the zeitgeist. The zeitgeist, as far as I can tell, believes that the best version of Street Fighter from that era, the kind of until it got to Street Fighter Alpha, I think, which is when the game started to change a lot, was Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. It's the one that I've actually covered a bunch on my channel, and I've got everything from player analysis and move analysis and sort of metagame analysis all the way down to actual elite match commentary coming on the channel, which is
well, you would like this.
Experimental.
Street Fighter was the first game I ever played.
Which version?
Street Fighter, I want to say 2 Turbo on the Super Metroid. Or on the Super Nintendo?
On the Super Nintendo, yeah. I know that it was ported. They did a lot of really good ports, actually, of that game. It was really impressive to see it move from the arcade to the home systems, because the home systems were so low power at the time. It's funny that in modern day, a lot of players, people of millennials, certainly, and definitely Gen Z and later, their impression is that arcade games are physical games like Dance Dance Revolution, or driving games, racing games, shooting games, and so on, that they're not actual games that have any depth to them at all, and that all the depth comes on console or maybe PC. In my era, the best games by far were arcade games. They were so much better than the games on PC and console. It wasn't even close. So when you played a game like Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition or something, and you played it later on the Super Nintendo, you were just hoping that it wasn't too ruined, that they didn't slice so many frames and stuff out of it, that the game just felt different. So the zeitgeist believes that Champion Edition, the game that was basically the sequel to the seminal Street Fighter 2 game, is the best version of the game. But I disagree. The game that I like the most came 2 generations later. Hyper Fighting came out after Champion Edition. It was kind of like a fan-made version of the game. I did not like it, particularly because of how fast it was. And the game that came after that was called Super Street Fighter 2, The New Challengers. And it introduced 4 completely unique characters that weren't just the boss characters converted into playable, but 4 individual unique characters that were added to the game: Fei Long, Cammy, T-Hawk, and DJ. And the rest of the characters went through a full revamp and quite a bit of rebalancing. They changed the way the graphics looked a little bit to make them more high res. They changed the sounds, I think, for the worse. The sounds in the original game were better. But in terms of speed and balance, and specifically speed, that game was so accessible. Because it was so relatively slow, it was the timing windows that existed to do these extremely precise combos went off the charts. And it made the game so fun because there was so much emergent gameplay in it. There were so many interesting things that you could just discover that were in these tiny little timing windows that were non-existent in the sequel to that game, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is the one that most people compete in and so on to this day. And they play it on like Turbo 2 or Turbo 3, where like the game is just a dumb spam fest. Super Street Fighter 2, the New Challengers, is my favorite Street Fighter game, and it's my number 4 on my list. Back to you.
All right. Okay. Number 3, huh? Well, see, this is where actually the list is going to get kind of hard for me. Okay?
It gets hard.
It gets hard because I think I know my top 3, but this is all personally subjective. Not saying they're the best games of all time. Okay. But number 3 for me, I think I'm going to have to give to Star Wars Galaxies.
Really?
The MMO. The reason is this is just previous to World of Warcraft coming out, and in my opinion, somewhat ruining the MMO genre forever. So this was back when MMORPGs were they actually had to have an idea. They didn't just think tab targeting, WoW clone.
Right.
They actually came up with a world, a concept, social systems. They literally tried to make like a universe for you to live in.
Yep.
And Star Wars Galaxies did this, I think, not only executed it well, but they had a good IP behind it as well, which, I mean, Star Wars is a fantastic IP. You get to choose to be in the Empire. You get to choose to be in the Rebellion. You get to have, like, I think it was like, I want to say somewhere between 40 and 60. I thought it was like 62, but I could be wrong. Different classes. You could be everything from somebody making music, a dancer dancing to that music, a bounty hunter who's in the cantina listening to music, just trying to find the guy he's trying to bounty hunt, to the doctor who's healing people that just got shot fighting in the street over some bullshit. Like, it was the type of game that it was like, you're not just playing it because you're trying to achieve a goal. The goal itself was just to log on and play it. Like, it had a way of making you feel like you were existing with people instead of people were in the way as you were trying to play the game. And like, I haven't seen an MMO actually be able to execute this concept again ever. This was like the last one in the line I've seen actually do it. And it had so many cool, unique, like Easter eggs and exploration. Players can make their own cities. I won't belabor this point too much because I know we're moving on, but it's like, players can make their own cities. You could have a guy that would literally sell and vend your stuff. All of the armor was tagged. It said made by whoever. So if you wanted to, like, I saw this guy made a good piece of armor, I need to contact him to try his armor.
So
you
cool,
could have droids. You could have speeders. You could fly from planet to planet. You could literally be a Jedi, but you wouldn't know how because you had to randomly master 7 different skills that you had no way of knowing. And then it would tell you the Force is whispering at you and like, oh, you happen to be Force sensitive.
Oh my
you
God.
found out.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that specifically because as soon as you mentioned Galaxies, an anecdote popped up in my mind, and hearing you discuss Jedi at the very end really, really relates to this question. My impression of Star Wars Galaxies is that it was almost a lesson of sorts. It was a parable, a teachable moment about giving players what they want, or at least what the players believe that they want. There's a maxim in game design that has been repeated by my friend Mark Rosewater a bunch of times when he discusses magic design over the years. And his mantra is basically, pay attention to what your players are saying. They're very, very good at identifying the problems in your game, but they're not good at coming up with the solutions. And my understanding of what happened in Star Wars Galaxies was that when people began to play that game and it started to get popular, I remember reading about it. They talked about the Jedi thing, how it was this mysterious, impossible, way beyond the end of the rainbow goal. That if you were a complete no-lifer and you did, as you said, 7 different professions, that you would get all the way to the pinnacle, and you have to do a bunch of extra content. At the very end, you would be anointed as a Jedi. And everyone's like, no, I will play this game to be a Jedi. What do you mean? I want to be a Jedi. Everyone wants to be a Jedi. And people screamed and yelled and screamed and yelled. And eventually the developers relented. And they're like, okay, fine. You can just make a Jedi when you log in, and we'll just make it a class. And after that happened, the game collapsed. Is that true?
Yeah. Okay. So I could go in on length in this.
I'm
topic,
sure we could.
I lived through this. This is arguably my favorite MMO of all time.
I can tell, yeah.
I have a lot of passion around this subject in particular, but like basically what actually happened wasn't the Jedi thing like that killed the game entirely. It was World of Warcraft, because basically WoW was killing every other game. What used to happen is you'd have the communities like split up in these different social dynamics of whatever they enjoyed about a particular game, and you'd have the group. But then WoW went and everyone bled out from these communities into WoW. And because all these games were, they had a decision. Do I let the community bleed out that we have, or do we try to execute what WoW is doing and hopefully try to keep some of the people that would otherwise play it? And they did that. And then instead it's like, why would you play the inferior version of WoW?
Totally.
Let's go play WoW. So like they basically did that. That's what actually killed the game. And they lost like over 40 different classes. It became tab targeting 1, 2, 3, 4. No one wanted that. And so that killed it. They did implement Jedi in particular, where you could just log in and play as a Jedi. And that like absolutely ruined the buzz. But like, that was on top of many other massive mistakes that were done in a row with that game.
It's interesting because with the passion that you talk about your experience with Star Wars Galaxies, I'm very, very curious to know what your number 2 and number 1 are. I need to think about number 3 here. Honestly, I keep coming back to a game that I played in mostly in 2024. By 2025, I wasn't playing it nearly as much. Yeah, I think that's right. The game is Balatro, actually.
Oh yeah, I love that game.
I
Addictive as hell, that game.
Unbelievably so. Yeah. I was resistant to play it for some reason. It was recommended to me by a whole bunch of different people, including the people on my dev team who said, Brian, you need to play Balatro. Balatro is awesome. I went, okay, give me the short pitch. Well, you play these poker hands and you put poker hands together and you beat bosses with poker hands. And I went, what the hell? That doesn't sound fun or interesting or compelling or anything. Count me out. And like has been the story of so many other games that I have tried and gotten into. I got into Balatro as a consequence of traveling, not specifically on a plane, but I had a lot of idle time on a visit. It was in fact to New Zealand in February. I'd be hanging out in the evenings and stuff after a day of adventuring in New Zealand. And this is February of, I guess it would have been last year. Yeah. So it was February 2025 or 2020. I think it was February 2025. Yeah. I was there last year. So I started playing Balatro, just trying it out. I went through a few playthroughs and it didn't really grab me. I'm like, yeah, this is poker hands. But like so many things, I kept having people tell me to go back and try it again. And I played it that second time and God, eventually, like I would have conversations with people. I would have dreams and everything is fucking Balatro packs and cards and stuff.
That's when you know, dude.
You know it's just in your brain.
Yeah, when you're when you're waking up in the morning, you're like half awake and you're just like doing math of whatever game.
Oh my God.
Like, that's when you know.
And eventually I played it for about the latter half of my trip to New Zealand. And when I played it, the flight back from, you know that a game is really taken hold when you get on a plane for 13 and a half hours and you don't notice at all. Like I'm sitting there, I didn't sleep. I didn't have any fatigue. I just played Balatro. I did like 4 playthroughs or something before the plane landed. When it landed, I was annoyed because I'm like,
it's a banger, banger of a game.
Yeah. I have to stop playing Balatro. And then I introduced it to my son. He got insanely addicted right away too. And he and I went through all of these challenges and stuff. And just the sheer emotional feeling, the highs and lows of that game, I haven't really experienced that in a very, very, very long time. You know, back to the Diablo 2 days. I've had a few other kind of tilting experiences in World of Warcraft and stuff, or like super, super just like beyond elation. But Balatro did it most recently, so I'm going to give it my number 3 slot. Back to you.
Okay. All right. Number 2. Okay. I don't have to think too much about this because my next 2 are easy for me. All right. Number 2 is going to be, okay, it's going to be Super Metroid. I was trying to say is it 2 or 1. It's Super Metroid. Super Metroid's my number 2. I mean, who needs this one explained? Like genre defining, flawless movement, even in 2026, amazing boss fights, best music ever. Like the animations are fucking awesome. The design of the map, the world, it's a flawless game. Super Metroid is like literally a flawless game. And like the fact that they did that on the Super Nintendo and were able to deliver it back then, and you feel like I feel like in that game I have superior control over my character than I do a lot of the games I play nowadays. Like it's just a brilliant game all the way through, you know.
When did you play it? Because it came out right around the time you were born, right?
Yeah, it did. So the first game I ever played was Street Fighter. But the first game I ever saw was Descent by Interplay, and the second game I ever saw was Super Metroid. My dad played it. You're talking about how your dad locked the cabinet. Oh, you know, we didn't have TV. We had rules around the house. We didn't play like, 2 PG, 13 type of stuff. But I did watch my dad play Super Metroid. You know, I got scared when he was fighting Mother Brain at the end and have to hide behind the couch.
Oh, that's so
like
adorable.
it made a original impression on me. And then, later on I played it, and then I played it in my adult years, etc. So like I have some nostalgia glasses for it for sure. But also like I watched Zosty, and Oats and Goats and Caleb Hart and all these people like speedrun it. I used to watch the speedruns of it all the time. I always watch them live at AGDQ. I watch their YouTube videos and their live streams, etc. So, it's that's number 2 for sure. I know we're running a long time, so I'll send it back to 2. We can get through the list. I got time to get through the list.
We got time to get through the list. God, number 2 game. So many different games come up. Would it be a cop out to say Diablo 2?
No, I mean a lot of people that big.
I got to say it's Diablo 2. There were so many other potential candidates, just really honestly anywhere in this top 5. But Diablo 2 was a special thing, I think, for me. Just not only just grabbed by it, but something that was a very defining moment in my life was encountering that game. It certainly set the stage inspirationally for everything that came afterward. But I have spent my life, and I think you're probably very much like this also. Whenever you would encounter a game in the wild, you would invariably find yourself wondering, how would I improve this? How would I make it better?
Sure.
And the impulse to do that with Diablo 2, as much as I enjoyed it, sort of served as the creative drive, the creative bedrock for what would ultimately lead to Path of Exile. Chris and I spent the early 2000s talking mostly on the internet, hanging out a handful of times, and discussing what an improved version of this unbelievably masterful game might look and feel like to play, how it would play out, what we would preserve from the original, what we would improve upon, and so on. It was just as a creative endeavor, and it's informing of one of the major things that I've ever been involved with. It's the role was very, very hard to describe and communicate in just a few sentences, but also just the elation that I felt playing that game for months and months and months, getting up every day, feeling like I am in line for the best day of my life because I get to spend the whole day playing Diablo 2. Just that feeling, I don't think any other game but one has ever captured that. And I'll get to that in a sec. Back to you, number one.
All right. Number one for me, I mean, it's pretty easy for me to say, it's RuneScape. So like RuneScape for me has the feeling you're talking about, which is like it's been, I don't think it's the greatest game ever made, but I sure as hell think it's the greatest MMORPG ever made. And MMORPG is easily my number one favorite genre of all time. It's had the biggest impact on my life in terms of all of the games. There was one point in my life before, content creation, I had a Sprinter van. We still have it. It's in the family, but it's a side project now.
Uh-huh.
It was being built out. I was going to live in it full time just so I could play RuneScape because I wanted to max out, I wanted to full complete everything. And I'm on my way to do so, but it's like that's what I was going to do. I was a single guy. I was making videos on, phone games and stuff at the time. I was like, I'm just going to build this Sprinter van and I'm just going to play RuneScape all day and do YouTube. And that's all I want to do. And so I watched my brother play it. It's one of those things like you have with Diablo, which is like, you can't really explain it in a few sentences. I think the game, I think a lot of people who've never played it look at it and be like, this looks like dog shit. And, and they probably wouldn't be wrong. I mean, it looks horrible. Okay.
Yeah. The potion system. Ugh. God.
Yeah, I mean, there's all, you look at a lot of things in RuneScape and you probably think it looks horrible, but it's like the reality is, I don't think I've ever played a game where a sense of achievement meant something like it does in RuneScape.
Yeah,
like the grind, what it means, the social system, the constant chase. Like there's just that game is the game that's like you never quit it, but you always come back. It's like home, that's like the home game. Like I never quit it. I'll take year breaks, but I'll come back to it.
I get it completely. My heart just fills with warmth hearing you say that. I think that probably everyone out there has a game like that. Mark, who has helped put the interview together, had a question for me earlier, at least a hypothetical one, about how are games the highest form of art that exists? Are they the highest form of entertainment and storytelling? And I think unequivocally the answer is yes, because games are the only thing that can play out over months or sometimes years of your life. I don't know how many years you played RuneScape, but
since 2001.
Since 2001. So 25 years of your 35 years have been spent playing one game. That's insane. Yeah. It's over 60% of your life has been spent in the context of that game. It is in your DNA. It's impossible for any type of other thing that isn't a game to probably fill that role. There's nothing that even really comes close. Yeah. So it does make them very unique, I think, and very special. I have two different answers for number one here, actually, and you'll have
Here we go.
It depends on whether or not you allow me to include this. But the obvious answer, of course, is Magic the Gathering. The thing is that Magic is fundamentally a paper-based game. It's played with cardboard, but a sizable portion of people playing Magic these days play it digitally. A majority of them play it on Magic the Gathering Arena, and many of them also play on Magic Online. And there's a bunch of other kind of third-party ways you can play Magic too. And people play webcam Magic, for example, also, although I guess that's fundamentally physical. Does Magic count as my?
I mean, I feel like it's somewhat cheating because we were saying video games.
Okay,
but like at the same time, yeah, okay, I get the logic. Sure.
I won't use Magic then. Magic is in its own echelon. It's above any digital game for a lot of different reasons, and I would love to talk more about that when you and I have a conversation down the road, particularly about Magic. For me, it's World of Warcraft, and it's really interesting that you have the same kind of experience with an MMO. Also, I didn't start playing World of Warcraft when I was 10. I played it in 2004, so I was 29 years old in 2004. Am I really that old? Yeah, I guess so. I was 29 in 2004. I was living in Santa Barbara, California, and the beta of World of Warcraft came out, and I had played other games made by Blizzard. I'd played mostly a lot of StarCraft, obviously the Diablo series. I was very, very interested in it from the get-go. And I made a warrior and I ran around shield slamming because shield slam was overpowered. And I was blown away by the game world, like beyond dazzled by it. I had never, ever seen or played anything like it. And eventually they nerfed shield slam and I got bored of the beta. And then when the game came out, I made a rogue. I'm not sure why I chose a rogue.
That's what I'm playing right now. I got my rogue open right here.
They're so badass. I named my rogue Galatopus, which was this absurd name that was actually almost a malapropism, a mispronunciation of the Galapagos Islands from my girlfriend at the time. And so I named the rogue Galatopus and started playing it. I played all the way up to level 60. I ground my way to level 60, almost doing no quests. Because quests were so alien to me as a player. I was used to just grinding in RPGs in the past. So I kind of just farmed mobs all the way to level 60, which took about a month. But the consequence of that was that I had enough currency that I was able to buy an epic mount in that game before they had reskins, before they had added new actual bling to the way the mounts looked. So I would ride around on this it was a white winter wolf, I think. I had the horn that summoned it, and it looked like a regular wolf, except that it moved at 100% mount speed. And apparently it's the basis of a super high level achievement in the game now called Old School Ride. And the problem is that I didn't get drawn into the raiding. So once I got to max level, I didn't really see the point of playing anymore. And raiding at the time, a lot of people are on dial up and stuff. I think they use Ventrilo maybe, or some even more archaic chat program. And it was a mess. I watched my friend try to raid for a couple of hours and it just seemed awful. So I left the game behind. I didn't come back to it until 2008. And by 2008, they had 4 more years. They had already released Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King was out. And a friend of mine was saying, Brian, you got to try out World of Warcraft. For the next 7 years, I was completely immersed in that game. Like lifestyle, thinking, guild, community, family,
Lich
aspirations.
King was pretty peak.
And it was so peak too, of all the times to come in too, right? I think that just in terms of the whole breadth of experience, nothing outside of Magic has ever given me so much entertainment and community the way that World of Warcraft did. So I think, in my opinion, and the fact, the game is now 22 years old and it's still enormous. It's still doing well by any metric.
I think we have the same experience, which is in the name. It's the world. Like you don't play an MMO to feel like you're playing a single player game. Like you play it to like live in another world or like experience the feeling of like freedom in the game that you kind of can't get from linear games.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. I'm playing, I played TBC and Lich King is my 2 favorite. I played the other ones, and all that, but like that was my peak experience was those 2. And so I'm replaying now. I have a raid here in 40 minutes. We're doing Karazhan here. I'm playing Rogue, and for some reason I get to play as a Rogue in a raid, which is crazy. But I'm only playing really for the PvP.
I'm jealous. Yeah, my left hand just starts to tingle when you talk about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, speaking of, I thought you were going to say your left hand burns because you're old and you got the carpal tunnel. I get that from playing League of Legends for 10 years straight. So like this shit kills me from WASD and League and all these games. So it's like my arm just is fried.
No, I cut my teeth as a hardcore arcade gamer when I was a little kid. My hands are like invulnerable to that. Fortunately, I can play full speed for hours and hours and hours, and the hand just does its thing. It's just maybe a generational thing. Either way, I think that for me, World of Warcraft, number 1, lifestyle game and so on. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Your number 5 was...
Number 5... Oh, man, what did I say for number... Oh, Command and Conquer. I did Command and Conquer.
Yep.
Okay.
Go through your list.
Okay, so it was Command and Conquer. Number 4 was Super Smash Bros. Melee. Number 3 was Star Wars Galaxies. Number 2 was Super Metroid. Number 1 was RuneScape. Or now it's Old School RuneScape, but RuneScape kind of in general there.
All right, if I can remember correctly, number 5 was Ultima 5, followed by...
Street Fighter? Was it Street Fighter?
I think Street Fighter was number 3.
Okay.
How can I forget my 4th favorite game?
It's hard.
It shows you that the list is not fully formed. I know that Diablo 2 was in there. Diablo 2 was the second most favorite game. Number 1 was either World of Warcraft or Magic. The elusive 4th game. That's not popping in my head. Okay, honorable mention, Storybook Brawl. Made by my friend. The best auto battler that I have ever played. We are unfortunately totally out of time. Darth, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you today. Honestly, I'm really, really glad we had a chance to do this. It is long overdue. We covered a million subjects, and there are a million more to touch on. And I hope that the next time we get to chat, we can talk a little bit more about the game company that I co-founded a couple years ago here in Seattle and the project that we're working on. I touched on it a little bit on Tavern Talk. We have made leaps and bounds since then, and I would really, really look forward to telling you some more about that.
That sounds good to me, man. I'd like to talk to you more about game design. Just kind of in general, we didn't get to that portion of the conversation, but hit me up again this week.
I sure will. Tons of different topics to explore. Again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining me on the channel, and I really look forward to our next chat. Yeah, thanks, man.
Cheers.